these are the seeds that we're watering and growing of Jacques' legacy, what Jacques started, which is to get the whole world dancing, because dance can change lives. And because as artists, our job is to imagine a world that doesn't exist yet and then give ourselves the tools to create that world.
This is Arts Educators Save the World, where successful artists and their mentors talk about how arts education transformed their lives. Hey, welcome. Arts Educators Save the World here, and today is a very special episode, a la After School Special of the 80s. And the reason it's a very special episode for me, Alec, is today we get to spend time with three folks who grew up in the same arts organization that I grew up in, the National Dance Institute. We've already been blessed to talk with our elementary school music teacher, who was a school-based arts educator who changed our lives, who changed Bobby Lopez's life, who changed Lin-Manuel Miranda's life. And now we're going to get to spend some time with two educators who changed the life of an actor, model, disability rights advocate, Jillian Mercado, who we're going to hear a lot more from, who grew up like we did, going to dance classes first at her public school, and then in special, as Jillian called them, golden ticket classes on Saturdays with first former principal dancer and founder of NDI, Jacques d'Amboise, then subsequently with the other artistic directors of National Dance Institute, including current director Kay Gayner, who we will speak to today, and physical therapist Agnes McConlogue Ferro, who was Jillian's mentor and teacher as she became a member of the National Dance Institute community, and who Agnes describes as the person who taught her how to move from being a physical therapist as a profession to being a teaching artist as a profession. So let's have at it. Jillian Mercado, designer, model, actor, and disability activist. Clearly we're twins because those are four descriptors that folks always use to describe me. It was really great to read about some of your many accomplishments. You designed for Diesel. You've appeared in campaigns for Beyonce and Target. You've been in Glamour and Vogue magazine. And I have to admit, I did watch for the first time one of the episodes of the L Word Generation Q, where you appear as Maribel. And I know you're not actually a lawyer, but you play one on TV. So that was pretty dope also to watch you put on the lawyer costume. And I read a little about your nonprofit, Black Disabled Creatives, and would love to talk a little more about how that project has evolved over the past few years. So, Jillian Mercado, what an honor. Welcome to Arts Educators Save the World. It's a pleasure to meet you and be in community with you.
Thank you for having me. We're basically twins.
Right?
I mean,
that's what people say. Model, actor, activist, Erica Halverson. Duh.
I finally found my twin. We have one in the world. I finally found mine. No, thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting. And as you were talking, I was like getting all these like flashbacks of my adventures with Agnes and Kay and NDI. There's been many endless adventures.
I can't wait to dig into some of those. Let's get started. I'd love for you to introduce our next guest.
So, the queen of all queens, Agnes. Agnes and I journey started when I was a little young child. God, what was it? Fourth grade?
I think so.
Maybe fourth grade. She was my physical therapist. And boy, did I not like her at the beginning.
Delete that part. That's the part.
Why did I want the building to go on fire every single time it was a session? Because going to the gym and working out sucks as a fourth grader. But as the years went by, thankfully, I still implement the activities and workouts today as a almost 36-year-old in 3 weeks. And our journey continued working with NDI and being a part of diversifying and including different bodies and different disabilities in the program. I remember it being like a lot of people who had disabilities in the gym during lunchtime. And Agnes was always there trying to like hype everyone up and making everyone feel included. And now to today, to having the Dream Team, right?
Dream Project.
Yeah, the Dream Project. The Dream Team. In my mind is the Dream Team.
Mm-hmm.
The Dream Project, where you kind of like head that with Kay and making sure that kids have an outlet of expression, no matter what disability they have, and also a form of community and a sense of self, and making new friends. As difficult as it is making friends in elementary school, and an adult is even worse, but the program definitely helps a lot of kids trying to center themselves and ground themselves and also find a sense of freedom and understanding. And that's what Kay and Agnes have been a part of.
Thank you.
That's what I say to you, Jillian Mercado. You had me at hello, is what I want to say to you.
And now, Agnes, we would love for you to introduce the final guest on today's podcast, NDI Artistic Director Kay Gayner.
NDI Artistic Director Kay Gayner. I get emotional. I'm the crier of the group, but I get emotional because I think to myself, sometimes you could be put in a situation or a place where it could be filled in by just anybody. And the great good fortune of National Dance Institute, of the Dream Project, and for myself has been Kay Gayner, who is, amongst other things, a fierce New York Times crossword puzzle, fiend is what comes to mind. She shall not be beat, and I will never take her up on any offer to do a timed crossword puzzle. So I could give you the stats. She started as Jacques D'Amboise' personal assistant. I don't remember what year was that. 1902?
I think it was
Circa
1902.
1902 plus. And then was a teaching artist, obviously, and then associate artistic director and co-creator along with me and Aileen Barry, just sort of recognizing in the moment at PS 199, which is where we met, along with Jillian in around 1998, I guess, Kay, or 2000, somewhere in there. And I think the beauty of Kay Gayner is that to her core, it is about children. It is about elevating and supporting and sharing the love of the arts, particularly dance and movement, and that it isn't limited to, as Jillian the Great was just saying, it isn't limited to a certain aesthetic, or a certain body type or a certain level of ability. It is all children together. And I think her gift is the ability, many gifts, is the depth of her creativity. It's just bar none. It's just not to be matched. So I appreciate all of that. And on a personal level, I have always appreciated the ability to collaborate, which in arts education, I don't think is always an easy thing. And so I've always appreciated somebody who's a physical therapist coming from a medical background and sort of stepping into this beautiful, beautiful world. You could sort of see that there could be challenges, and it is not the case with Kay. And I'm deeply appreciative and recognize that. And I am very honored to call her my friend, Kay Gayner.
Welcome, Kay.
Thanks. Thank you, Aggie. And thank you, Jillian, too. And collaboration goes both ways, and inspiration goes in spiraling circles upward. And so I think, you are foundational to my inspiration and my collaboration and all of that. So thank you.
Kay, can you introduce the guest who isn't here, which is NDI?
Oh, yes. All right. National Dance Institute was created in 1976 by ballet luminary and extraordinary human being Jacques D'Amboise. Jacques believed deeply and thoroughly that the arts have the power to transform children's lives. And I think he believed that because that was his experience as a child growing up, partly in Washington Heights. He went to ballet classes with his older sister. And then the next thing he knew it, he was studying with Balanchine, who introduced him to Marc Chagall and Stravinsky and surrounded him with extraordinary artists at the peak of their abilities and their creativity. And he really believed that that changed the trajectory of his life. And as he was approaching the end of his career as a ballet dancer with New York City Ballet, he walked into a New York City public school and said, "Hey, how about I teach a dance class?" With that, he was realizing he was giving back and wanted really genuinely to give every child the same opportunity that he had. And I also think with that act, he radically transformed the idea of what education can be, because he insisted that the dance class that he was going to teach be part of the school day, happen as part of the regular, quote unquote, curriculum of the school day, not an after school program, not a substitute for physical education or a free period, but core to a child's school day. And so the belief of NDI was that the arts are integral to every child's education. Aggie and I often say when Jacques said every child, he meant every child. And so DREAM, the NDI DREAM Project, is a natural extension of where Jacques started. We partner children with and without disabilities in performance-oriented programming that maximizes participation for every child, that builds bonds between the children, and that really fans the flame of every child's unique abilities. So NDI, we serve 6,500 children in the New York City area every year in 46 schools. And we also have 12 associate programs across the United States and international programs in Shanghai, China, and Beirut, Lebanon. These are the seeds that we're watering and growing of Jacques' legacy, what Jacques started, which is to get the whole world dancing, because dance can change lives. And because as artists, our job is to imagine a world that doesn't exist yet and then give ourselves the tools to create that world. So that's NDI.
So Jillian, you talked about how you and Agnes met first in a therapeutic context. I would love for you to talk about what you remember about your introduction to the DREAM Project and how dance and movement made their way into your life, more as art forms, how you came to dance.
I think actually the DREAM Project was later installed. When I came in, it was kind of more of and correct me if I'm wrong, an experiment. I'm not sure we had a name actually for it. I think it was just like NDI dance program at lunchtime situation.
Come on down.
DREAM Project's a better name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. But I remember starting there and then graduating to the SWAT team and then graduating to the celebration team, which was like cool to say that I did all three. What I can remember from like the fourth grade, I remember it being either once a week or twice a week. And everyone that has some sort of physical disability and friends, because I know like my best friend was part of it as well, was able to come on during lunchtime. So we would eat really, really quick and then go to this like dance program in our gym and just like hang out and dance with Jacques was always there. I remember a guy with a piano was there, and it was like, I think like 20 kids maybe, or 15 to 20 kids or something like that, once or twice a week. Us just like expressing ourselves, having the best fun ever, and then going back to classroom and having this like internal like secret society that nobody in our class knew about except us. And then we would do little performances once a year. And I built so many like interaction with friends. It helped me with my social skills. I was super shy as a child. Definitely not as an adult. I was very, very shy. Thinking about it now, NDI really helped me kind of like get out of my shell and express myself through dance. It was such a safe environment. Half of me really wanted to go outside and be where the people are, but in so many ways, it helped me be like the first steps of becoming a teenager, understanding life and figuring it out and just being one with the people. That sounds weird, I was saying out loud, but yeah, it really did.
Agnes, were you a teaching artist in that first program?
No, I don't even know how to describe what my role was, but I had gone to the principal at the time and said that I really felt so strongly that we were, and by we, I meant the entire sort of special education unit, for lack of a better description. We were sort of in one area, but we weren't really. I felt that a lot of the children that we were working with weren't included in different activities, and that it should be more, and what could we do to do more. And it was actually him who said, well, come tomorrow at recess, there's this dance program that's coming in. And he didn't know that I had a dance background. He didn't know sort of anything along those lines. But I was really so curious, Jillian, if you remembered how you started with the dance program, because I just walked up to you and said, oh, I call her Jilly Peppa. Like, that was my nickname for her. So I was like, Jilly Peppa, we're going to go upstairs and there's this dance program and you're going to love it. Like, I don't even think that there was like a conversation that happened of, do you want to? Or, there was no choice in the matter because I knew she would love it. I always tell this story because I think it captures really everything. And I was waiting for one child to bring her up to the NDI practice, which was upstairs on the second floor in the gym. And the physical therapist working with her was struggling to get her to raise one arm and reach for whatever she was supposed to reach for. Nothing. We go up into the dance class and I'm talking to the girl, and we get up there, and Frank was the piano player and the accompanist, I should say, and he was playing. And the kids would, do you remember that, Jillian? Just sort of be kids together. Yeah. One of the children ended up being her partner, and I'm standing behind, and what do I see? But the dance step is calling for the children to raise their arm. And this young lady who was just downstairs in the physical therapy gym and was not able to do it was suddenly able to do it, and was doing it because it was requested by the teaching artist. It was the music, and it was her partner. It was her partner who was like, we've got this, you've got this, let's do this together. And so that for me was really a life-changing moment. You talk about arts and education. I don't really think many people would also put it into sort of my role as healthcare provider, and it most definitely lives there. As Jillian is saying, it sort of has morphed into different programs, but really the DREAM Project is truly, and we're not done yet, but is truly sort of this on that trajectory of what did we learn, and every time we do it, what did we learn, and how do we keep building?
Mm. And Kay, were you the teaching artist at the school in those early days?
In the very early days, it was Jacques who started it at PS 199, and Lori Klinger, who was the associate artistic director. I don't know if she was at that time, but became one of the associate artistic directors of NDI.
Ellen, Kitty was there.
Were teaching, and I believe Aggie Kitty Lunn was involved, who is a disabled artist who uses a wheelchair, was part of the very, very beginning of it. I think when I came on board, so I was Jacques' assistant back in the early days, and then left for about 10 years to have a career as a performer, singer, dancer, actor, but always stayed very close with Jacques. And then around the year 2000, I came back as a teaching artist at NDI. And that is when I came to PS 199 and started working with that program. And so I think the first year I was working with Lori and Aggie as part of the PS 199 team, and Frank Ponzio, who was our accompanist at the time. And then pretty shortly after that, Jacques kind of handed the program over to me. And that one class expanded into a full fourth grade program. And we kept this class that was focusing on partnering children with and without disabilities, children from, I guess at the time, it would have been a self-contained class, along with the children who were in the other fourth grade classes. Back in the very beginning, it was by audition for the fourth graders, but when we expanded it to the full program, it was every fourth grader on the grade was taking an NDI class, and then by invitation, children who were excited and eager for more, we gave an invitation to come and join this class that at the time we called Special Forces. Then it turned into Supernovas a little bit later. Those really were the original seeds of DREAM. I guess I will say at the time, PS 199 was a magnet school for children with disabilities and had all kinds of resources. And at the time was one of the few public schools in the city that was fully accessible. The laws changed. There are stories that Aggie's probably better equipped to tell than I. But as that sort of shifted, and then we got the NDI Center in Harlem. We have the NDI Center for Learning in the Arts in Harlem, which is a home for us with studios and offices. And that was about 10 years ago. And when we opened that center, Aggie and Aileen, and you were around, Jilly, too. I think we were probably calling you up and asking for your advice and counsel at the time. But we realized that there was a need that, since children were going to their neighborhood schools at that point, that there was a need to have some kind of place where we could bring children from all over with a wide range of diagnoses into one place. And we finally had the home where we could bring them. And that's where it turned into the DREAM Project and was not located within PS 199 anymore, but was fully an NDI project at our home.
Got it. I would love for you to talk a little bit about that journey, if you could, so you had these experiences at your school, connected with Agnes and with your friends at school. How was the transition to the SWAT team and what was that like? And how did that shape you as an artist?
God, you guys are really taking me back to memory lane here. I think I remember the day I got the paper. This was Saturdays, so you had to give up your Saturday. Mm-hmm. And at the time, it was at LaGuardia High School, which was pretty close to the elementary school, PS 99. So I knew the area. It was behind Lincoln Center. I was like, okay, I understand the gist. And I remember getting the paper as if it was like, I was like Willy Wonka and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Like, this was the hot ticket of the year. Like, nobody gets this ticket, and I got this ticket. So I felt so accomplished. I'm like, I'm going to be a movie star from this one paper. That's how it felt like, at least for me. No one else had it. I had it. I graduated. I did the thing. That was a feeling I had. Other kids would be like, but you're giving up your weekend and your Saturday to go. But I was so excited for this. I was like, what else am I doing on Saturday? Watching cartoons? Ugh, that's for babies. I'm going to a dance program. The transition, as far as physically being there, was a journey, at least for me. Because I was, if I'm not mistaken, the first one who had a physical disability that graduated. But it was me and Denise Mendoza, I believe. Yeah. We both were the only two with physical disabilities in all of the Saturday program. So we kind of stuck together and gave each other advice. And we were all figuring it out. I think the teachers as well was trying to figure out how to best make us feel as safe as possible and make us feel included as possible. So it was very much a journey of all of us trying to figure it out together. Like, nobody knew more information than the other. You know more this side, I know more this side. Let's come together and figure this out together, which, at times were really frightening because I was with the big dogs. Like, everybody who was in SWAT and Celebration, they knew their stuff. They knew their dance moves. They wanted to be dancers when they grew up, and be in Broadway or be in a ballet, company or something like that. So I felt intimidated at times, but I think my Taurus energy has always kicked in even when I was younger, and my stubbornness and determination was full on the mask. And I wanted to make them feel proud that they chose me. So I did everything that I could, practice on Sundays, only had the end of the year celebration. I was on it. It was a beautiful experience because I got to, socialize and make friends at places that I would not have friends before.
Can I just ask now? This is Alex Poppy in here. I too was on the SWAT team.
Oh, yes.
But I will say that I'm relatively certain that the paper that came to me was meant for someone else and they just messed up the address. That said, it was a while ago. Kay, once again, can you talk us through what the SWAT team is as compared to what goes on in the schools?
The heart and soul of the NDI program is the in-school program. And that is where we partner with public schools. It's not all public schools, but we partner with New York City schools. And that is where we're in 46 schools across the boroughs of New York. In those programs, there are weekly classes for the most part across 30 weeks of the school year. We now do some residencies that are shorter term, but really the main program is over 28 to 30 weeks. In those schools, in those programs, when we are in a school, the principal and the administration of the school decides what grade it will be. Traditionally, it's 4th grade or 5th grade. That's kind of our core wheelhouse. But we increasingly have programs that also go from like pre-3K to 5th or 6th grade. But for the most part, the 4th and 5th grade programs, when children, we as teaching artists meet the children, and there are always children who are really excited about NDI and really eager and committed to it. It's not necessarily always the ones who learn the steps most quickly or the ones who are the most quote unquote talented, whatever that may mean in this world, but the ones who are really hungry and are leaders in their classes are offered a scholarship. And that's the golden ticket letter that Jillian is talking about and that you're talking about, Alec. They're offered a scholarship to come and join us in the Saturday program. In the first year of that, we call it SWAT. The acronym is SWAT. That stands for Scholarships for the Willing, Able, and Talented.
Huh.
Wow.
Also, back in the day,
Never knew.
full transparency, I will not lie. I think Jacques originally called it the SWAT team because he was very interested in making sure that boys felt as good about dance as girls, and that people of all identities and genders really be excited about it. So I think Jacques back in the day thought SWAT sounded like a cool thing.
Wow.
So that,
Smart man.
children who might be like, have some idea about dance not being mainstream enough or macho enough, or I don't know what you would say now, but that people could say, oh, I can't go to baseball practice. I'm going to the SWAT team instead of I'm going to dance class, and potentially risk being made fun of. So, dual parallel history of that acronym.
Gotcha.
But so SWAT is for the first year, children who are currently participating in the in-school program and coming on Saturdays. We have rehearsal every Saturday during the school year. The children learn advanced choreography. We have guest artists come in and choreograph for them. And then that group does extra dances in the end of the year performance. At the time, at the end of the year, everybody came together and it was 1,000 children at the Felt Forum in Madison Square Garden. So there were classes from all the schools all over New York. And then there were these 2 scholarship program teams who did extra dances. Today, each school has its own set of performances for the school community during the day, and then an evening performance often for friends and family in the neighborhoods. And then the scholarship programs have the fully produced kind of Broadway level production. So today, the SWAT and celebration teams are about 200 children, and we perform at, major venues. Graduates of the Summer Institute are then given an invitation to join the celebration team, which Erica and Jillian were both part of the celebration team. Once you're on the celebration team, you can stay with NDI through 8th grade. Back in your time, Erica and Jillian, it might have been 9th grade.
It was 9th grade.
And we super didn't want to leave. I mean, right?
No, I cried. That's another story.
There's the final performance of the event of the year, which is what we call the big end of the year performances. There's always a group of 8th graders now, it used to be 9th graders, but who would be like dancing their hearts out and weeping as they danced in the last thing. So yeah, it's quite an extraordinary set of friendships that the children build. And, I think that's part of what performance, offers, having it be a performance-oriented program where we're all working toward an end goal that's bigger than ourselves, and being part of a team and working so hard. The discipline and the rigor and the joy of it, like there's a bonding that happens. So there are children who are with us from, if they're tiny tots, we call it the first team now, but we have children who start with us when they're 5 years old and stay all the way until they're 13 or 14. So they've been with us for years by that point. Hence the weeping. Cue tears when they have to leave, when we kick them out because in high school, there are other opportunities. If they are interested in a career in performance, it's time for them to go get some more formal training and technique. We help them with their auditions for performing arts high schools and all of that. But it's also, you get to be a 9th grader, and we want them to have to choose other activities. And we always stay connected, but it's time to move on. And the next group who's looked up to the 8th graders all year long get to step into that role. And there's a sort of a beautiful passing of the torch in that.
There's so many things that I want to get back to, but one is, Jillian, I know from reading about you that design is in your DNA. And so I know that being a designer is probably something that you had thought about regardless. But I'm wondering about the performance aspect of your life as a model and as an actor, and whether you draw lines to NDI, to that part of your life as an artist.
It's funny you bring this up because as you were talking about weeping on the last day of NDI, I remember that day like yesterday, and like just being on stage and seeing the crowd for the very last time was an experience. It was a life-changing experience, and it definitely built the stepping stones of being a performer now and an actress or modeling for that matter. It's such a prideful moment to know that that was like my introduction to securing yourself on stage or wherever you are because of NDI. But it definitely has helped me be more aware and feel security within myself because I was able to do that when I was younger in NDI. And being one with the crowd, with the people, and having empathy towards other as far as like the space that you're in, and allowing people to be in your space, and also allowing people not to be in your space because you don't want to hit anybody, with your dance moves or anything like that. You know what I mean? But that can also like metaphorically translate to boundaries and people around you. And that was definitely, I was young, but it was definitely a place where I was beginning to learn all of that. So it was a great platform during that time to have that as like my stepping stone to what I use as an adult now.
My name is Graham Isidore. I have a progressive eye disease called keratoconus. Admitting I'm losing my vision has been hard, but explaining it to other people has been harder. Lately, I've been trying to talk about it. Short-sighted is an attempt to explain what vision loss feels like by exploring how it sounds. By sharing my story, we get into all the things you don't see about hidden disabilities. Short-sighted from CBC's Personally, available now.
So Agnes, I want to start with where you tried to start while we were paused. It started, I remember your first day of the SWAT team.
Jillian I love every time you say, I'm going down a trip down memory lane. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm right next to you, Jilly. I am right next to you. Because I was thinking about SWAT. And I love how you phrase it, Erica, because it's sort of that transition too. Because you're going out of your school, your community, where you know everybody, where there just may only be a few children that you know from school that are now in this whole other environment. And I remember bringing Denise, she must be a year ahead of you, Jillian. I don't even remember. But I remember picking her up and bringing her down for the rehearsals and being really nervous, like thinking to myself, is this the right thing? Or, is everybody ready for this? Like not just her, the other children, but are the teachers ready? Like, is everybody ready for this? And I remember she got out there and everybody sort of stopped what they were doing and they turned and they looked at her. She just got herself into line and I was standing next to her and I felt very protective of her. Then I just remember sighing. But then when Jillian did her first day, I remember going through everything all over again. But what really struck me and the thing that I have in my mind is that she just went right out. Kids, hey, Jillian, like it was all of that. And she just started doing side home or whatever the warm up was, and she just got into that routine. And I turned and I walked out and I cried my eyes out. I cried like I'm an internationally known crier, apparently. But the reason that I cried that day was that you couldn't even imagine the beauty of that moment. Like it is something that I still remember, so deeply that it was as it should be. She was doing what she loved to do. It was as it should be. I will never forget that moment. And I keep it with me to kind of keep going forward, that There was such beauty in that room of we're all together, we're all doing this, and acceptance and inclusion and dance. And it was really about just that, kids being kids and dancing. More of that, please.
And I want to talk about, Kay, the purposefully designed shared practice of the warm-up, and wonder if you could say a little bit about what I hear. And I hear a lot of amazing things in Agnes's comment, but one of the things I hear is that one of the ways to purposefully value everyone's contributions is to have some shared practices readily available when everyone comes into the space. Can you talk a little bit about that as a practice?
Yes. I think there's something profound to the ritual of starting something where everybody comes together and the purpose is to share focus and come into the room. When it is something that we build that is something like a warm-up as a practice that everybody is teaching and gaining over the first few weeks, and then it's regularly how we begin, I think there's something grounding and connecting for everybody in the room when there's that kind of it's not really ceremony. Do you know, it's the same thing as the actor putting on the costume and the makeup in the dressing room. It's readying yourself for this elevated moment of common work around imagination and around creation and around learning something and creating something that didn't exist. You know, look, I made a hat where there never was a hat. That's every single rehearsal for dance and other kind of performing arts. So there's that kind of in an uber sense, I think, as the practice of a way of life being an artist. Specifically, when we are practicing inclusion and making space and a sense of belonging for every single human being in the room and every body in the room, one of the things we do at Dream is take the time as we're building that warm-up to make sure that everybody knows how they participate maximally. So, you know, we've come to call it translations of any movement that we have. Often within Dream, we'll make it partner versions. So it's never like isolated individuals, but there are duos and trios throughout the room who together we examine kind of like what is the intention, what is the dynamic, what is the direction of the movement, and how do we make a version of it that captures that kind of artistic intention and often the physical intention. Are we working on core strength? Are we working on stretching? And so that everybody knows what their version of it is. And we as the teaching artists and all the children in the room know what an excellent version of it is for each team, each child and or each partnership. So that it's differentiated instruction is kind of the jargony technical term for it. But what it really is making sure that we hold high standards and we ask a lot of every single person, given what is available to each of them. A lot of times in partnership, a lot more is available because there's, I don't know, just from a choreographer's point of view, you can sort of grow something into an even bigger, exaggerated version of itself if you're doing a plie. I remember Jacques always used to say, when you're doing a plie, right, you're lowering in space, right? You know, you're bending your knees if you're a standing dancer. But from the audience's point of view, you're getting smaller. And so if you're a wheelchair user, you back away because that's another way of it kind of embodying that principle of getting smaller to the audience. You retreat and then you advance as the unbending. Mm-hmm. So looking at, you know, sort of unpacking the I don't know, what's most important to the choreographer or to the purpose of the warm-up so that everybody is fully expressing some kind of intentional version of that. It's a beautiful and I think really exciting and creatively stimulating way to approach this moment where we all come together and we practice the fact that everybody has a part to play and that the standards are high for every single person in the room. And that, you know, we as the teachers will get you there. That's our job. You know, it may be difficult, it may be challenging. we will get you there. You just have to meet us by trying and doing your best. And then we're ready to dance. By the end of it, then we're ready to dance.
I would just add on, it's a very strength-based approach. You know, sometimes we don't know exactly what the warm-up will completely look like, because sometimes we have children who may be limited physically in such a way that really what they have available to them would be eye movements or very limited finger movements. And so really, really strong believers in participation, and it's a strength-based participation. So, you know, what's available to that child? Well, then let's work off of that. So I love, you know, I sort of came up with the phrase, expect, don't accept. And really that was just, I felt what I learned from Jacques.
I guess I want to hear a little bit from all of you, but Jillian especially, about the value of the art form, both changing you as an artist, but also changing the art form itself. You know, one of the things that I love about what you said, Kay, is you're selling short, I think, the idea of it's not just about making sure every kid has access. It's about fundamentally changing the art form by drawing on the assets that all the kids in the space are bringing to the project of dance, which is, to me, more significant than we give everybody access, which is a wonderful goal, but this is, to me, is something more.
Yeah, 100%, so much more. Yeah, I think this has to do a lot with my career as well. It's about humanizing humans. I think that there is always like this set of rules that are always given out that we've been like reading for hundreds and hundreds of years. I think the moment when someone's like, wait a minute, not everything is black and white. There is a rainbow out there, hence why we have a rainbow. We should see our internal and external kind of in the same way, as far as like, there's so many different people in this world. You know, why are we not catering to like the variety of humanity? And it's okay to change the rules, and it's okay to modify, and it's okay to like, you know, make other people feel safe in a place where society has always said, this is the way to be. Instead of molding into this weird box, it's the other way around. This box is being molded into the people. At least when I started NDI, I think that's what we were all molding at the beginning stages of the molding regarding dance. I've loved dance and ballet specifically ever since I was little. My parents, well, my dad for that matter, loved classical music, and I still do till today. It's my little meditation zone, or when I can't go to sleep. Especially in the ballet world and in classical music kind of world, it's very like, this is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And it has to be those steps. And coming into NDI, that's what I thought I had to mold myself into. So I was very determined to like figure out a plie, so much so that I wanted to blend in so you don't see me. NDI kind of told me, 1, that's impossible. And 2, it's okay. It's okay that you don't blend in. It's okay that like you have to come up with your own different steps or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's all cohesive and it's all going to look beautiful. And that was a lesson that I learned early on in NDI, where I didn't have to mold myself into somebody else. I could be myself. And that was really important, especially in the beginning years of childhood, where you're trying to figure yourself out, where you are in the world, and entering adulthood or teenage years for that matter, which is like the worst times in any humanity's life. You know, I had security with NDI on Saturdays, at least, knowing that I could be myself. Those were the stepping stones of building my confidence and not being as shy as I was before, and owning my space, and knowing that my individuality is as important as everybody's individuality. And teamwork came in the way as well. My God, teamwork was essential at NDI. If one domino fell, all the dominoes fell. And that was not acceptable with Jacques. So we had to get up to it and learn that we work collectively as a team and as one, better than in people being selfish or having their egos too high. Because if somebody felt bigger or other, than the whole dance routine was garbage, basically. And that helped a lot with like adulting and being amongst everyone in the world, and knowing that like your individuality is important no matter where you are. NDI was the foundation of all of that and helped me a lot for sure with my career now and the things as a person that I encounter in my everyday life.
I think a lot about the power of representation as one of the core features of art making. And Kay, when you were talking about plie and you were talking about what a plie is, and what I heard in what you said is that a plie looks like a breath. And the question of what can a breath look and feel like in every body? And then how can we use that diversity of what breath is and looks like to make a different representation that captures breath but is beyond a knee bend?
Yes, Erica. And I would add to that, it's a breath. And if you have many versions of it, it's a fuller expression of what a breath actually is, which is what we're kind of trying to get at, I think, in the arts, is especially in dance as a form, what can't be spoken or captured, but is sort of deeply human. Like that's where the response, the silence that falls over the room before the thunderous applause, is when we've sort of tapped into a piece of humanity that doesn't get expressed all the time in the words kind of world. Many versions of it, I find, more beautifully and in many times more profoundly capture that feeling and communicate that than one way is capable of. So, Jillian, as you were talking, I was thinking where I really want us to be going, and I think we always have, and this is Jacques, and this is certainly Agnes McConlogue Ferro. It's not just okay that your version is a little bit different or that your individuality is an essential piece of the way you perform every movement. It's not just okay. It's beautiful and it's vital to the bigger story of humanity that we're trying to tell. As we've been developing DREAM, we always talk too about, the importance for anything at NDI of live performance, that everything we do ends with a public performance where there's an audience there to applaud or celebrate in whatever way that particular audience does the children's achievements. And I think a piece of it in DREAM is also to really transform an audience's understanding of what dance can and should look like. What are the possibilities for beautiful and effective choreography? And we all have an idea of what that is supposed to look like. Or I don't know if we all have an idea, but we carry a lot of history and a lot of weight and baggage around what it should look like at different levels. And I actually we really believe that there are these deeper and, for me, more interesting possibilities for what it could look like when we have many different bodies and many different minds participating in the creation process. Audience advocacy. I like to think we're training another generation of audiences who have a very different idea of what dance can look like and what the experience of being in an audience for a dance and live music performance should feel like, should look like, should sound like, should be. And a generation of children who participate in the arts and become their own advocates and walk into, Agnes, I'll toss it to you to tell the story, but children who walk into a ballet studio where the teacher has said, I don't know what to do with you. And they say, let me show you what you can do with me.
Essentially, the girl that I was describing before, we've had a few children who are physically limited to the point where she really just had facial expressions. I'm doing them now, and use of her fingers so she could manipulate her power wheelchair. Some children have driven with proximity switches, so close to the head so that they're able to drive. But Alexa is this one young lady's name who will be going to college next year, by the way. But she is someone who, very much like Jillian, who earned the nickname Jilly Pepper, from fourth grade, Alexa gets attention and gets, what she needs. And her sister was at a local dance studio. And so Alexa wanted to also take dance. And the teacher, to her credit, very much wanted to welcome her, but felt that she really didn't know what to do. And so Alexa did DREAM and then came back, and she and her mother showed the teacher the video clips of what had taken place. And again, to that teacher's credit, she incorporated her into the performance. And my daughter and I went to go see her at the recital. And it was so beautifully well done. And really, I don't think the power of that is spoken enough. What we see and what parents and children have told us is what happens when they leave Studio One at National Dance Institute, when they leave the gym at PS 199. And across the board, the wish and the hope was recognized in it did not stay in that studio, that the transformation and what they observed was I now have an expectation. That's how I should be treated elsewhere. It goes so far beyond dance. It really does. It's the power of the arts, but it's the power of the arts done right, isn't it? Like that's sort of the bigger question is you have to have that aspect of it as well.
Forgive me a potentially cheesy transition, but we're coming close to the end of the time. And given what you just said, Agnes, I would love, Jillian, for you to tell us a little about Black disabled creatives. And the reason I think that's a cheesy transition is we've been talking about how the experiences, both artistic and developmental, stretch into our lives beyond our participation in NDI. And as a person who has developed their own nonprofit advocacy groups and see that you are also my twinsy in doing that, I wanted to hear a little about that work, just as that work, and then also maybe to think a little about the threads of NDI and how that connects to your commitments and your advocacy.
Yeah, I actually was going to start the other way around.
Oh, great.
And kind of like reinstate the fact that like NDI essentially was like the foundation of me becoming an advocate and like defending myself in every platform that I see myself in, future and past, especially with advocacy, with the community of disability for that matter. I'm very, very vocal in anywhere I am. That is the Latina in me, comes through really hot and heavy with Black disabled creatives. It was during the time where we were reintroduced with Black Lives Matter and noticing how all types of communities were coming together and building this like empathy towards maybe a community that we did not know of, how bad things were, or didn't know it was happening to begin with. And I was noticing that my community, specifically the disabled one, wasn't getting the attention or recognition that I see and live through every single day. And I, like Jacques, needed to do something about it and saw that there was an opportunity where I can not only educate, but have people understand that because this is happening, my community is being affected and not in probably the ways that you might think. And that 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 4 people in this world have disabilities, whether that's physical or invisible. And I think we underestimate the invisible part, very much so. So I came up with this platform with a friend of mine who's an engineer to create opportunities in the workplace for Black disabled who are creatives. Because with my line of work, I get constantly people asking me, oh, is there other people like yourself who we can hire for A, B, C, and D? And I'm like, yes, you literally just have to walk in the street and you'll find somebody. Like, it's not that hard. But apparently, through a lot of people who were ignorant, which is fine. I always tell people it's fine to be ignorant as long as you are willing and open to learn about it. That is just the way the world turns, is you don't know something, you learn, and now you know. And hopefully you won't be ignorant of that topic ever again, which is how I educate people with anything dealing with myself or disability for that matter. I am not Mother Teresa and I don't know every single disability that there is out there, but I can definitely have space and empathy to learn about it. So I created this platform so that people, brands, companies can find more people like myself out there in different fields, as far as like models, photographers, creative directors, artists, and understand that like, the stereotype that people may have or misconceive notions that people have of the disability community is not always correct, because it was drawn out and said by somebody who wasn't in the community And the assumptions have been greater than the people who actually live through it. So that is my form of trying to help my community as much as possible now. And we have currently hundreds of users right now who go on it to build community, to know that they're not the only artist that there is out there. They're not the only model that there is out there. And they can hopefully, my hope is that they can find community and friendship and projects. And also with brands and companies, letting them know that there's not an excuse to not hire, especially with COVID happening. We have now changed the ways of working, and that we can, interesting enough, work from home, which was something that my community has been battling since the day of yore. So now that everyone, during that time at least, at the beginnings of COVID, where people really were scared to go out, it's like, oh, welcome to the world of disability, where this has been our truth and our day every single day of existence. And now you all, welcome to our community. It's nice and warm and toasty for you. That's pretty much why it's always important to just think outside of yourself, because there's a whole world out there.
Is there a website or something that you want listeners to be able to access if they want to know more?
Yeah, the website is literally blackdisabledcreatives.com.
Awesome. Easy peasy.
Super simple.
I often just remind Erica the name of her book, How the Arts Can Save Education. And this is just, not to unceremoniously remove the filter of metaphor here, but obviously every word out of everyone's mouth here can and should apply to social studies and math and science. And what Erica's book is very much about is what are these practices that can be taken from the arts world. And so much of what you're saying about, and actually, Kay, specifically saying, well, everyone's talked about this, that we're not saying there are no standards, that Jacques had very high standards, but standards don't exist just as this universal thing for everyone to reach exactly and tell the same story the same way, the same dance moves, the same answers in science, but that you all come with something, as Erica has talked about. You're not just arriving at school as an empty vessel to be filled up. You bring something to it. So the way that you're matching what people bring with high standards,
Yes.
That's the answer.
Yes, the answer there is yes.
Well said, Alec.
So I think the coolest thing that we heard today was the conversation about how the strengths of all the dancers who come into the room are not only aspects of people to be tolerated, but part of what reshapes what dance is and can be. So thinking about how a wheelchair dancer experiencing a plie moves our understanding from a plie as a knee bend to a plie as a breath, and how a breath can look on stage is, for me, one of the greatest powers of arts education, to then highlight what an asset-focused approach to teaching and learning really can look like, and how that's different from tolerating difference. And not that there's anything wrong with tolerating difference. We want to tolerate difference. But in the arts, difference becomes the foundation for rethinking creatively what art making can be in a particular art form.
I don't think too many of our listeners are probably tied to a form of education that is walk in with your mimeographed form sheets and teach from those. But still, the very idea that you can't walk into a classroom, you wouldn't walk into a dance studio, to a theater, to a classroom with any sort of preordained idea that wouldn't, in first principles, take in the personhood of the people there, I think can still be mind-blowing to people. There's no such thing as we must do it this way when you're dealing with other humans. As your book is saying, as this interview is saying, a great example of how that simply does and can work is in the arts, and NDI clearly at the forefront of this.
All right, Alec, give it to me. How are we going to say goodbye to each other today?
Well, it does remind me of something I'd like to ask you. In fact, I've got a question, not just one. I've got 3 questions. Are you ready, Erica?
1 question, 3 things.
You know, Erica, here's what I have today. I have 1 question, but I'd love to get 3 solid answers to it. Your question today is, what is something you have not yet but would like to dance on?
The moon.
Number 1.
My childhood bed.
Number 2.
The very fluffy hair of my newly born niece.
3 things? I want to see that one.
I will show you a picture of the amount of hair that this 2-day-old child has. It is like someone slapped a tiny wig on an alien. It's incredible looking. Alec, I have a question for you.
Bring it.
What are 3 things that our listeners can do to continue to engage and grow the audience of people who want to transform education through the arts?
Rate and review this show, please, on Apple Podcasts.
1.
Write to us with your questions and any ideas you might have at contact@artseducatorspodcast.com.
2.
And go ahead and visit us online at www.artseducatorspodcast.com to see all sorts of cool stuff.
3 things. Well, as we like to say on this show, onward together.
Arts Educators Save the World is hosted by Erica Rosenfeld Halverson and produced and co-hosted by me, Alec Lev. Our executive producer is Doug Matica, and our audio producer is Justin Asher. We are also executive produced by the fantastic group at Story Pirate Studios, Lee Overtree, Benjamin Salka, and Amy Fiore. Original music is by Dan Lipton, and our artwork is by Lyra Evans. Check out our website, designed by Cole Locasio, at www.artseducatorspodcast.com. You can follow us on Twitter @ArtsEducators. Yes, somehow that wasn't taken yet. And on Instagram @ArtsEducatorsPodcast. Write to us with your questions and comments at contact@artseducatorspodcast.com. And wherever you're listening, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review. It really helps the show. We are proud to be sponsored in part by the Wallace Foundation, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and the Gibb Faculty Fellowship. Arts Educators Save the World was created by Erica Rosenfeld Halverson and Alec Lev.